Waitress serves grumpy senior for years. Receives strange call after he vanishes. But before we start, please make sure to subscribe to M&R TV and hit the bell so you never miss any upload from us. Also, leave a like right now. Melina Salazar, a wonderful woman from Texas, has worked as a waitress for most of her adult life. While she initially jumped around, for nearly the past 2 decades she's worked at the same Luby's restaurant in Brownsville, Texas. Over her years as a waitress, Salazar learned to deal with difficult situations along with even more difficult customers. However, some customers are a lot harder than others. Like Buck, a World War II veteran who seemed to hate everything around him. In fact, soon after he started coming to Luby's, Salazar became the only employee who would wait on Buck. While he was often a curmudgeon, in the end, Buck would change Salazar's life forever. Melina Salazar was a middle-aged woman working as a waitress at Luby's, a cafeteria-style restaurant in Texas. While most don't consider waitress a dream job, Salazar felt differently. Over 17 years as a waitress and 6 at Luby's, Salazar learned to love her job and became incredibly good at it. Without a doubt, she was one of the, if not the, best waitress in the place. Salazar always focused on excellent customer service, treating every single customer with respect and sympathy, no matter how difficult the customer behaved. According to her coworker, she's always smiling and trying to cheer everyone up. But by setting herself apart from the rest of the staff, Salazar also opened herself up to her most difficult challenge yet. Because of her great attitude towards every single customer and swift service, especially those who were demanding, a manager assigned Salazar to a special position. She would deal with the pickiest customers at Luby's. Most of us would hate this job, but of course, Salazar had no problem fulfilling her duties, wanting to treat everyone with respect. Specifically, one particular customer acted so poorly that the other waitresses never wanted to take his order, unless they absolutely had to. To be fair, Salazar didn't find dealing with this customer particularly easy. In fact, he was one of the most problematic customers she had ever dealt with in her entire career. However, Salazar had her reasons why she decided to continue serving him. 89-year-old veteran of World War II, Walter Buck Swords, was the regular customer whom the staff at Luby's wanted to avoid as much as possible. According to most, he had a short temper and a severely less than pleasant personality. You can see why the staff at Luby's avoided him. Over the years, he built quite the reputation among the waiters and waitresses. Not only did he have a bit of a temper, but he also went to Luby's for lunch every single day. Unfortunately, his reputation ultimately got the better of him. In time, no one wanted to serve him. No one except Salazar. Thankfully, she always felt ready to serve Buck. While everyone knows someone grumpy, Buck took it to the extreme. Whenever he walked inside the restaurant, no one knew what to expect. It didn't matter the quality of food or time of day, he would always find something to complain about. Buck didn't like to be kept waiting, so he often got impatient and cranky with his orders. In fact, according to Salazar, he even sometimes cursed at the staff. It got to the point where even the most senior waitresses in the restaurant had, little by little, grown tired of his unreasonable demands. However, unlike the rest of the staff, Salazar always loved the challenge and would happily wait on his table, with a bright smile. How did Melina Salazar continually serve Buck while others could not? Well, despite his grumpy reputation, Salazar had always believed the key to successful customer service is respect. Still, like everyone else who worked at Luby's, even she had some run-ins with the infamous customer. In fact, the first couple of times she served Buck, Salazar admitted she was at the edge of losing her calm demeanor. Nevertheless, Buck had earned a soft spot in her heart. In time, she had grown to care about the grumpy old man a lot. Little did she know, Buck had a special surprise for her. In time, the 89-year-old Buck became so grumpy that everyone else had become indifferent towards him. So Salazar became his primary waitress, serving him almost every time he came in. Salazar didn't care about his temper or the things he said. She only saw him like any other customer or an elderly person in need of assistance. Aside from an urgent request from a manager or another customer, Salazar would not stand and watch Buck sitting around with no one attending to his request. For her, Buck was just a person who was there to get the best possible service. There's no room for doubt, she was his #1 waitress. While Buck didn't like a lot of things, he did love one thing, Luby's menu. However, he did have one strict, rare request. Whatever the World War II veteran ordered, he wanted it served piping hot. In fact, Salazar said he even liked it when it burned the roof of his mouth. After serving him nearly every day for 7 years, Salazar had learned precisely how Buck liked his food. After all, she truly wanted to live up to Buck's expectations. So Salazar served Buck his order exactly the way he liked it. She always tried her best to make him happy, though it wasn't easy peasy. Over those 7 years, things slowly got better. Salazar got to the point where not only did she work hard on trying to perfect Buck's food, but she also served him with a smile. A naturally kind person, the waitress always tried to strike up a conversation by asking the grumpy man how his day had gone so far. Meanwhile, the restaurant staff kept wondering how she managed to pull off a happy face every day and handle their pickiest customer. However, Salazar would welcome Buck every day with excitement. She no longer saw him as everybody did. Sometimes, not very often, she could even get a smile out of him. As Melina Salazar and Buck got to know each other, time marched on. For 7 straight years, waiters came and left. Cooks made their food, and Buck came in at the same hour for his daily meal. For better or worse, he had been a prominent figure at Luby's, all because of his colorful personality. Of course, Luby's, like every restaurant, had plenty of regulars. However, Buck had set himself apart from the rest. So that day when he didn't show up, even those servers, who didn't appreciate him at all, noticed his absence and started wondering. Still, none of them seemed too concerned, except for Salazar. Over 7 years, Salazar became accustomed to seeing Buck every day. Like all of her regulars, she looked forward to seeing him. So naturally, Salazar knew the time he would drop by, well aware that he was never late. The day continued to pass by, but no sign of Buck. Salazar found herself wondering if something might have gone wrong. Despite his age, Buck seemed healthy and energetic. After all, he needed energy to fuel that temper. However, Salazar couldn't help but have overwhelming thoughts. So she tried to brush off all the negative thoughts. While she felt genuinely worried about Buck, she still had a job as a waitress. Another day went by and still no sign of Buck. He never missed a single day, yet no one but one person seemed to miss him very much. Salazar just thought he might be feeling under the weather and needed a couple of days or so to get some rest. However, there was no way for the caring waitress to check on his well-being. Meanwhile, her co-workers began constantly joking about Buck, asking her if she missed her short-tempered customer. Salazar just laughed at them and remained positive they would have him back in no time. The waitress had no idea what the future held for her and Buck. Soon the days turned into a week, and Salazar couldn't help but wonder what had happened to her everyday customer. Still, the waitress had no way to reach him, nor did she even know where to start. Salazar had learned a lot about Buck. Most importantly, he enjoyed his privacy. Not once had he talked about his personal life with anyone. Salazar had been his #1 waitress for almost a decade, and he never said anything about his life to her. She resigned herself to not knowing and continued with her life, serving her customers like she always had. However, Salazar would soon make a discovery that would change herself forever. Depending on where you live, you might not know that Luby's is a very popular restaurant in Texas. So with so many customers to attend to, Salazar eventually forgot about Buck. Then, out of nowhere, the waitress discovered something in a local newspaper. Even stranger, she just felt compelled to pick it up, not looking for anything in particular. There, Salazar spotted something written on the obituary page that immediately caught her attention. In an instant, she found out the reason why Buck hadn't been back to the restaurant. Sadly, it was because he had passed away. Salazar started to feel very perplexed, unable to believe what she read in the newspaper. During their time together, Salazar had grown to appreciate her grumpy customer. For a while, after reading his obituary, the waitress couldn't bring herself together to make a sound. She just stood there speechless, staring at the details written on the obituary page as sadness filled her heart. Of course, Salazar was surprised by how she reacted to the sad news. The waitress never expected to feel this way. Salazar could not believe the sudden feeling of sadness and loss that gripped her heart. While the other servers acted as if nothing happened, Salazar could not help but feel heartbroken. She would never see one of her favorite customers ever again. Salazar's co-workers could not understand the reason for her sadness. After all, she couldn't count the number of times Buck had smiled at her on both hands. if you can call the slight twitching of his mouth a smile. Nevertheless, the waitress had found a special place in her heart for him. Salazar had a hard time trying to understand why she felt pain knowing she would never serve him again. So the waitress did the only thing she could think of. She sent out a prayer to her favorite picky customer. In doing so, Salazar hoped he would find his way to rest in peace. Despite the loss of a regular customer, Luby's continued its operations on a daily basis, as there were many other customers that had to be taken care of. As for the rest of the service staff, they were completely oblivious. They didn't seem to care Buck would no longer come to their fine establishment. Some of them were even thankful that they didn't have to look at Buck's grumpy face any longer. They felt happy that he would no longer sneer or curse at them. For the rest of Texas, the world didn't stop. Yet, to Salazar, it felt like it had. After Buck's death, Salazar felt an empty feeling inside. The waitress often found herself staring at the door, hoping Buck would walk in through them. Unfortunately, he never would. Even if she didn't know much about his life, just knowing that Buck served during World War II was enough to earn Salazar's respect. Based on what she had learned from his friends and family, Salazar knew what the soldiers had gone through in order to preserve people's freedoms. His service meant he had been through enough, and Salazar had just wanted to make his life better. However, it was time to move on, until Salazar's phone rang. After a while, Salazar's everyday life began getting back to normal. She made peace with Buck's passing and started giving excellent service once again. Then, one day, the waitress received an unexpected call from someone she didn't know. Salazar was on her break time when the call came in, so she answered it. On the other end of the line, a stuffy-sounding lawyer asked for her by name. Afterward, the lawyer said something that made her heart stop for a second. She couldn't wrap her head around it, thinking it must be a mistake or maybe a cruel joke. However, the lawyer soon confirmed his identity and the legitimacy of what he told Salazar. At first, Salazar couldn't understand what the lawyer said. She understood the words, but not the context. The lawyer revealed he was the legal attorney for the late Walter Buck Swords. Then he proceeded to tell her that Buck had included her in his last will. He asked if they could meet tomorrow to go over the inheritance. Salazar felt stunned, trying to process all the information, but agreed. The old man had a very special surprise for the waitress who had been there with a smile for the last 7 years of his life. Still, after the call, Salazar couldn't explain what she felt. What on earth could Buck have left her? More importantly, why her? After her shift at the restaurant, Salazar just wanted to head home and think about Buck. The lawyer would be over the next day, finishing up the necessary process. Still, all while working, she couldn't help but wonder why Buck had chosen her to be part of his will. What set her apart from his friends and family? In all their time together, Buck had never been kind to her or never shown any interest for her, much less for her life. Nevertheless, he had included her in his last will, so Salazar began to contemplate every memory she had of Walter Buck's swords, seeking for answers. Before falling asleep that night, Salazar brought back every memory she had of her grumpy customer. She remembered how Buck never had any kind words for her and others. However, she had learned how to adjust to his crabby nature. The waitress had even learned to care for the old man. Salazar was filled with compassion for him, along with an incredible amount of respect for his profession and his past. However, once did she feel appreciated, or did she think Buck noticed how hard she tried to make him happy? She would soon learn how much Buck truly appreciated her efforts. All the customers and other waiters knew of Salazar's incredible customer service, but did a great job expecting nothing in return from the restaurant's customers, least of all Buck. That's the reason why when the lawyer called, she was so surprised, to say the least. The next day, just as he had, Buck's legal attorney showed up at her door to discuss the details of Buck's last will. Once inside, he revealed exactly what Buck had left for her. In the end, the veteran left the waitress his favorite car and $50,000. She couldn't believe Buck had left her this incredible gift. Of all the people in the world, he chose her. Forward-thinking, Buck had expected that Salazar wouldn't accept the gift right away, so he made a firm request to his lawyer to ensure Salazar would ultimately receive his gift. As Buck predicted, Salazar was having a hard time deciding whether or not she should take his gift. The lawyer told Salazar that Buck would be happy and rest in peace, knowing that he had at least made her life better. It was an unexpected act of appreciation which Salazar deeply appreciated. After some hard thinking, she decided to cooperate with Buck's attorney and respect the old man's final wishes. Salazar was extremely grateful for Buck's act of appreciation toward her. She believes no amount of money can equal a human's compassion and kindness for another. Furthermore, she loves her job and would treat any customer the same way she treated Buck. In the end, all of those years of effort finally paid off, though Salazar wasn't expecting this gift at all. For her, a simple act of gratitude is more than enough to make her feel her work is worth it. As long as she continues to work, she will keep having the same smile on her face, treating people the way she would like people to treat her. Besides being grateful, Salazar also learned a valuable lesson she will hold onto for the rest of her life. Looks can be deceiving. Not because a person seems to be angry and hot-headed all the time. It means they have forgotten the simple virtues of life. Buck is the best example for the waitress. Afterward, Salazar made a promise to herself that she will continue to be cheerful and helpful, never expecting anything in return. As for the gift, Salazar is aware she should use it wisely so she would be able to extend Buck's generosity to other people in need.